There is a specific kind of silence that falls over the Foro Italico in Rome just before a tennis match begins. It is a heavy, expectant quiet, saturated with the history of the sport, the rust-red clay waiting to record the brutal geometry of human limits. If you have been paying attention to the 2026 Italian Open, you know that this tournament is supposed to belong to the Titans. It is supposed to be the undisputed territory of the established hierarchy. We are living in an era defined by overwhelming, baseline-crushing power. We are living in the age of Aryna Sabalenka and Elena Rybakina. They are the gladiators of the modern Women's Tennis Association. Sabalenka, with her roaring intensity and thunderous forehand, and Rybakina, the reigning Australian Open champion, a player whose game is built on an ice-cold, seemingly effortless brutality. They are the names that sell tickets. They are the names that draw the global broadcasting deals. But something entirely unscripted happened in Rome this year. If you look closely at the crowds, at the social media engagement metrics, at the sheer decibel level echoing off the marble statues surrounding the outer courts, and eventually the BNP Paribas Arena, the main attraction was not the Belarusian powerhouse, nor was it the Kazakh world number 2. The center of gravity at the Italian Open mysteriously shifted. It shifted away from predictable coronation of tennis royalty and locked onto a 20-year-old left-hander from the Philippines, Alexandra Eala. Now, if you only glance at the draw sheets, you might be confused. You might look at the results and point out that Aryna Sabalenka suffered a shocking early exit, opening up the draw. You might point out that Alexandra Eala was ultimately eliminated in the third round by Elena Rybakina in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3. So, the logical question arises, why are we dedicating an entire deep dive to a player who didn't even make the second week of the tournament? Why is a third-round exit generating more international conversation, more fervent fan devotion, and more panic in the boardrooms of rival sports agencies than the players actually hoisting the trophies? This is not a story about a single tennis match. This is a story about the fragile psychology of sports popularity, the profound impact of global demographics, and the invisible forces that decide who gets to be a champion and who gets to be a global icon. What is happening right now with Alexandra Eala is a systemic shock to the tennis establishment. It is the awakening of a sleeping giant. By the end of this analysis, you will understand exactly why the traditional superpowers of tennis are looking over their shoulders, and why a 20-year-old from Southeast Asia, despite a third-round loss, has already won the most important battle on the tour. The implications of what happened in Rome will change the financial and cultural landscape of tennis for the next decade. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we have to rewind the tape. We have to look at the contextual backstory of how the WTA Tour arrived at this strange, fascinating crossroads in May of 2026. For years, the women's game has been desperately searching for its next transcendent superstar. After the retirement of Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova, the tour fractured. We saw a revolving door of world number ones. Iga Swiatek eventually established a dominant reign, especially on clay, while Sabalenka and Rybakina formed a formidable resistance, splitting major titles among them. But pure athletic dominance does not automatically translate to cultural gravity. Swiatek is a tactical genius, but she is notoriously introverted. Sabalenka is a fiery competitor, but her appeal is often highly localized. Rybakina, for all her undeniable brilliance and her recent triumph in Melbourne, possesses a stoicism that, while intimidating to opponents, does not always invite the audience in. They are respected. They are feared. But are they universally loved? Do they inspire millions of people to wake up at 3 a.m. just to watch a second-round match? Enter Alexandra Eala. Her arrival on the global radar was not a slow burn. It was an explosion. It is hard to believe it was only a little over a year ago, at the 2025 Miami Open, that Eala first shattered the glass ceiling. She entered that tournament as a wild card, a teenager ranked outside the top echelons, known primarily in hardcore tennis circles as the 2022 U.S. Open Girls Singles Champion. Junior success is a notoriously unreliable predictor of professional glory. The tour is a graveyard of junior prodigies who could not handle the physicality, the travel, and the crushing mental weight of the adult circuit. But in Miami, Eala did the unthinkable. She upset Elena Ostapenko. She dismantled Madison Keys. She stunned IGA Swiatek. She rode a wave of adrenaline all the way to the semifinals. It was the moment the world realized that she was not just a promising prospect. She was an immediate threat. But one miraculous run does not make career. The true test of a player's mettle is what happens after the element of surprise is gone. What happens when the locker room has a scouting report on you? The 2026 season has been the answer to that question. Eala didn't fade into obscurity. She doubled down. She started the year making semifinals in Auckland. She went to Dubai and upset top 10 player Jasmine Paolini to reach the quarterfinals, pushing her ranking to a career-high world number 31, making her the highest-ranked Filipina in the history of the tour. This brings us to the why factor. Why is her popularity eclipsing players ranked significantly higher than her? The answer lies in a potent cocktail of representation, playing style, and the sheer power of the diaspora. Tennis has historically been a Eurocentric and American-dominated sport. Asia has had its trailblazers, most notably Lina, who opened up the massive Chinese market, and Naomi Osaka, who became a cultural phenomenon. But Southeast Asia, a region teeming with hundreds of millions of people, a region with a burgeoning middle class and a rabid appetite for sports, has never had a homegrown, consistently elite tennis superstar to call their own. When Alexandra Eala steps onto the court, she is not just playing for ranking points. She is carrying the demographic weight of an entire region. The Philippine diaspora is one of the largest and most globally dispersed networks in the world. Wherever Eala plays, be it the hard courts of Melbourne, the humidity of Miami, or the clay of Rome, the crowd transforms. They bring flags, they bring noise, they bring an atmosphere that feels more akin to a World Cup football match than a polite country club tennis fixture. This is the difference between passive viewership and active fandom. Sabalenka and Rybakina have fans who appreciate their tennis. Eala has a nation that lives and dies by every single point she plays. Furthermore, her playing style inherently breeds a connection with the audience. Sabalenka and Rybakina play a brand of tennis that feels superhuman. They hit the ball with a velocity that the average person cannot even comprehend, let alone replicate. Their success feels out of reach. Eala, on the other hand, while possessing immense talent, relies heavily on grit, hustle, and tactical intelligence. She is a left-hander who uses heavy topspin, sharp angles, and relentless court coverage to dismantle opponents. When you watch Eala, you see the struggle. You see the sheer physical effort required to overcome players who are often taller and naturally more powerful. She is the archetypal underdog. Even as her ranking climbs, the audience sees themselves in her fight. They relate to her vulnerability and her resilience much more than they relate to the untouchable, robotic perfection of the tour's highest tier. Let us break down her specific campaign at this year's Italian Open to truly understand the microdynamics of her game and her standing. Rome is a notoriously difficult tournament. The clay is slow, heavy, and punishing. It demands immaculate footwork and infinite patience. It is a surface that exposes any weakness in a player's physical conditioning or mental resolve. In the first round, Eala faced Magdalena Frech. After dismantling Frech in the first set with a rare and brutal 6-0 bagel, Eala faced a severe momentum shift, dropping the second set 3-6. This is the exact moment where young players usually crack. The pressure mounts, the unforced errors pile up, and the veteran opponent takes control. Instead, Eala recalibrated, dug her heels into the red dirt, and ground out a 6-4 victory in the third. It was a messy, beautiful display of problem-solving. In the round of 64, she faced Wang Xinyu, the Paris 2024 Olympic silver medalist. This was supposed to be a severe test. Wang is incredibly experienced and hits a heavy ball, but Eala dismantled her in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3. She broke Wang's serve 7 times. She manipulated the Chinese star around the court, exploiting the angles, refusing to let Wang dictate the pace of the rallies. It was a masterclass in controlled aggression. And then came the clash that the entire tournament was waiting for. The round of 32, Alexandra Eala versus Elena Rybakina. World number 42 versus world number 2. The relentless hustler versus the reigning Grand Slam champion. On paper, the 6-4, 6-3 scoreline in favor of Rybakina looks routine. It looks like the established order reasserting itself. But a deep dive into the analytics and, more importantly, the optics of that match reveals a completely different narrative. The match took place under the lights of the BNP Paribas Arena. The atmosphere was electric, overwhelmingly tilted in favor of the Filipino underdog. From the first ball, Rybakina attempted to assert her absolute dominance. She served 6 aces. She won an astonishing 73% of her first serve points. When a player of Rybakina's caliber is serving like that, the match is usually a foregone conclusion. It is a procession. But Eala refused to play the role of the victim. She hustled for absolutely everything. Former world number 39 Jill Crabaugh, analyzing the match for Sky Sports, noted something profound. She pointed out that while Rybakina's numbers were heavily padded by outright winners, Eala forced the world number 2 to earn every single one of those points. Eala broke Rybakina's supposedly unbreakable serve 3 times during the match. Think about the psychological pressure that applies. Rybakina, an ice-cold killer on the court, suddenly found herself in a street fight. Every time she hit a ball that would be a clean winner against 90% of the tour, it came back. Eala hit only 1 ace and struggled with 5 double faults, exposing the reality that her serve is still a work in progress. She only won 48% of her second serve points. Yet, despite these statistical deficits, she kept the match agonizingly close. She showed such incredible heart, such a refusal to yield, that even in defeat, she emerged looking like a future champion. Crabaugh observed that this was a vital benchmark for Eala. Playing Rybakina for the first time gives a young player a visceral understanding of the absolute highest level of the sport. It shows you the gap between being very good and being legendary. Rybakina was outstanding, but Eala proved she belonged on the same court. After the match, Eala took to social media, simply stating, "Rome heard me this time," and she was absolutely right. The noise she made transcended the final score. However, to maintain credibility in this deep dive, we must play the devil's advocate. We must strip away the emotion, the nationalism and the hype, and look at the cold, hard realities of professional tennis. Is the Alexandra Eala phenomenon sustainable, or is it a passing trend? We have seen this movie before. The history of tennis is littered with meteoric rises followed by agonizing public collapses. The cautionary tale of Emma Raducanu looms large over any young player experiencing sudden, massive popularity. Winning the U.S. Open as a qualifier catapulted Raducanu into a stratosphere of fame and wealth that she was entirely unprepared for. The subsequent years have been a grueling cycle of injuries, coaching changes, and the crushing weight of impossible expectations. Can Eala avoid this trap? The counter-argument against Eala's long-term dominance is primarily technical and physical. While her baseline game is incredibly solid and her tennis IQ is off the charts, her serve remains a liability. Against players like Rybakina or Sabalenka, if you are dropping in second serves at 80 miles per hour, you're going to get punished mercilessly. Furthermore, her reliance on retrieving and hustling requires a physical toll that is difficult to maintain over a 10-month season. The clay courts of Rome are forgiving on the joints, but the brutal hard courts of the North American swing are not. If she does not develop a weapon that can win her cheap, free points, she risks burning out her body by the time she is 24. There is also the immense psychological burden of being the chosen one for an entire region. Right now, she is the underdog. The pressure is relatively low because every deep run is viewed as a bonus. But what happens when she breaks into the top 10? What happens when she is expected to win? When the massive Filipino diaspora transitions from hoping she wins to demanding she wins, the atmosphere can turn from supportive to suffocating. We have seen players paralyzed by the pressure of representing their nations. Eala has handled it with remarkable grace so far, stating on the Australian Open sit-down podcast that she is simply living out her dream and that she is happy to be a part of the growth of women's tennis in her region. But saying the right things in a podcast and maintaining that mental equilibrium down break point in a Grand Slam quarterfinal are 2 entirely different things. The hype machine is running at full capacity. Her matches are the main attraction because they are an event, a cultural happening. But if the technical holes in her game are not patched, the top tier of the WTA, the Swiateks, the Sabalenkas, the Rybakinas, will figure her out. They will create a blueprint to dismantle her, and the meteoric rise could plateau into a respectable but ultimately frustrating mid-ranking career. Yet, even if we accept these counter-arguments, even if we acknowledge the severe challenges that lie ahead of her, it does not diminish the reality of what she has already accomplished. And it certainly does not explain away the undeniable shift in the tour's center of gravity. This brings us to the grand trajectory. What is the long-term implication of what we are witnessing right now? Let us project 5 years into the future. It is the year 2031. Where does the sport of tennis stand because of Alexandra Eala? In 5 years, regardless of whether she has won 3 Grand Slams or 0, Eala will have fundamentally altered the economic and geographic landscape of tennis. The popularity she is experiencing right now compared to Sabalenka and Rybakina is not a fluke. It is an indicator of a massive untapped market. For decades, the WTA has struggled to fully penetrate the Southeast Asian market. The region has the population, the rising economic power, and the cultural appetite for global superstars, but it lacked a native hero. Eala is that hero. Because of her, over the next 5 years, we are going to see a tidal wave of investment pouring into tennis infrastructure in the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. We are going to see global brands that previously ignored the sport suddenly competing for sponsorship space on the shirts of young Asian players. The narrative that tennis is an exclusive Western-centric country club sport is going to be shattered by a generation of kids who watched a 20-year-old Filipina go toe-to-toe with Elena Rybakina under the lights in Rome. Furthermore, the very definition of a main attraction is going to change. Aryna, Sabalenka, and Elena Rybakina will likely go down in history as superior statistical players. They will likely win more major titles, hit more aces, and spend more weeks at world number 1. But Eala is operating on a different axis of influence. She is not just winning matches. She is building a demographic bridge. The broadcasting rights in Asia are going to skyrocket. Tournaments will begin to adjust their schedules to accommodate primetime viewing in Manila and Jakarta. The entire gravitational pull of the tour will slowly drift east. This is why her third-round exit in Rome feels like a victory lap. She walked onto court as a heavy underdog. She took the absolute best shots the world number 2 had to offer, and she walked off the court to a standing ovation, having absorbed the experience and proven her resilience. She is projected to rise to world number 38, continually cementing her status as an elite professional. But the ranking is almost secondary to the aura. The final thought I want to leave you with is this. In the brutal zero-sum game of professional sports, there's a profound difference between achieving dominance and achieving relevance. Dominance is hitting a forehand harder than anyone else on earth. Dominance is serving 6 aces in a set to secure a routine victory. It is impressive, it is clinical, and it wins trophies. But relevance? Relevance is making millions of people who have never picked up a tennis racket care about a third-round match on a Tuesday night. Relevance is forcing the entire sporting world to learn how to pronounce your name. Elena Rybakina won the match in Rome. She advanced to the round of 16. She did exactly what a world number 2 is supposed to do. But Alexandra Eala captured the imagination of the public. She proved that you do not need to hold a trophy to hold the power. The tennis establishment is watching. The rival agencies are watching. Sabalenka and Rybakina are undoubtedly watching. The era of pure, unfeeling power might be peaking, but a new era, driven by sheer force of will and the roar of a new global audience, has officially arrived. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. If this analysis changed the way you view the current landscape of professional tennis, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We rely on your support to continue breaking down the invisible narratives behind the biggest stories in sports. Until next time, keep watching the courts, because the game is changing right before our eyes.